people mistakenly think that my goals have to be your goals in a relationship. And it's one of the biggest fears is, okay, my significant other's not a goal setter. How do I get them on board? We've touched that. But the next fear is, what do we do if our goals aren't the same? And the answer is they actually don't have to be. Set my goals. Set them with your wife. Oh, so good. So good.
Dude, thank you. I needed that. You know that I'm on day 3 of a water fast?
I did know that.
Yeah, 5 days, man. I've been talking to Bronstadt about it. I have energy today. I'm a little fatigued, but I would say I'm a 7 out of 10 right now.
That's pretty good.
Day 3 without food. It's pretty amazing.
I went for a 3-day before because you inspired me with your 5. Like, I feel so good. I'm like, well, if Roman can do it, I can do it. And I got to day 3 and I was a very cranky person. I was like, screw this. I'm going and I'm eating.
Oh, man. I'm looking forward to Saturday food after volleyball. It's going to be good.
Yeah, baby.
So, dude, we're talking goals today, and I'm really excited about this. I want to thank you to begin for inviting me last year to the retreat. Tatiana and I had an incredible experience. One of the activities I remember was the cards that you gave, where the values that were listed out, and you didn't give a lot of time, and it just forced you to go with your gut and pick your values. And that was really enlightening. It shed a lot of light on why we do what we do and why we fight when we fight and why we love each other so much. So it was really powerful. She and I had never done anything like that. I'm pumped that now other men in our group have gone through it. And we were just talking a moment ago that Hal is going through it with Urs, and that is really cool. So props to you for the big success. Grateful that you took this online this year and continued the journey. How are you feeling right now, man?
I feel awesome. I mean, this is our 4th year facilitating the couples goal setting retreat around the one thing principles. And it's become one of the best things that we do because, you know, as high achievers, we absolutely set goals in our businesses and we have goals for our personal lives. But what we've realized is the vast majority of us, if we have a significant other, most often they're not a goal setter as well. Right. And we wonder why we're not growing together. So this year, the ability to do it virtually has actually created more opportunity because 1, I don't have to limit it to 250 people now. I have infinite scale. And 2 is it gave us the ability to do a specific retreat just for couples. And then the following weekend to do one for individuals and teams. Same principles, but there are tracks that are custom for both.
What have you heard from attendees over the years? What breakthroughs, what stories inspire you? Who's inspired you with the action they've taken, the alignment they've had?
I just interviewed a couple named Mark and Jenny. And Mark is the goal setter. Jenny is not. And when I asked Jenny, I said, Jenny, what were your hopes or intentions of coming to the retreat? And she said, Geoff, honestly, Mark and I were at this point in our marriage where it would have been a win if I could have just stood to be in the room with him. Our marriage was on the rocks, and I was genuinely wondering, with 2 babies, would I be better off going at this alone without him? And when they came to the retreat last year, just like you and Tatiana, we facilitated this exercise where they got really clear on what their core values were. You know, we all have things that we value, but we're not always in tune with what the top 3 core values are in order of priority. And for them, they were able to narrow it down just to a solid number 1. And Jenny's core value was efficiency. Mark's was fun. And this was the core of all their conflict because Jenny always wanted to do things in the home to create efficiency because that's her core value. That's how she shows love. And Mark's looking at her going, you are no fun. You are sucking the fun out of the family. And Jenny's looking at Mark saying, you just want to be Mr. Jokester and you never want to get anything done. And it was the point of conflict. And the moment they realized, oh, snap, this is your core value. Suddenly it was, oh, you're being efficient because that's how you show love. And I love you for that. Oh my gosh, you're trying to bring fun because that's how you show love. And I love you about that. And it changed their marriage, completely saved it.
You know, one thing that's true for me, and I'm wondering how true this is for other people, is that I've done goal setting exercises, values, you know, frameworks that reveal what we care about, personality assessments, all those things.
Yeah.
What I also found is that it's so important to revisit them. That just learning about them one time, and I was expressing that to you, that just going through any book and I'm like, oh, this is what I care about. But if I don't come back to it, if I'm not reminded of it, if I don't have it hanging on a wall, if it's not part of our family discussion, if I'm not remembering what my wife's core values are, I just forget. And then it's like, it needs to be something that is revisited. Do you have a lot of people that come back and do your event every year as a tune-up?
Heck yeah. It becomes an annual ritual. And there's real significance behind what you're saying. My partner, Jay Papasan, and I were going for a walk one day, and he said, you know, Geoff, the world doesn't need a new way to set goals. They need a way to have a relationship with them. And every single one of us fundamentally gets this. You know, John, take me back to early days when you and Tatiana met. Like, you remember that moment or that date when you really realized you liked her?
Mm-hmm, definitely.
What was it?
I was really the first time I ever saw her, she got out of her car and I was like, I'm in trouble. The first time that we sat down and had a conversation, I just knew that I loved this soul. Mm-hmm. Not from I didn't know that we would get married, but I just really vibed.
Yeah. How ridiculous would it have been when you guys sat down and you were feeling this connection if you had looked at her and said, you know what? I am in awe of you, and I would love to grow an amazing relationship with you. So here's what I'm going to propose. I'm going to propose that you and I get together in a year from now and see how it's going.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Right? Well said.
Here's why we share this with you. We fundamentally understand how to have a relationship with another person. We don't know how to have a relationship with our goals.
Yeah.
Just like you said, sitting down and getting clarity on what your top 3 core values are, those were your core values in that moment. And they're not set in stone. It is something that you can date and check in with. And it's the same thing with our goals. When we cast a vision for our life and work it down to what we're focusing on for this year, the top things that matter most to us, it's not something you put on a piece of paper and set it and forget it. It's something that should determine your behavior on a weekly basis. So just like dates, you sit down and you do things to enrich it. And when things are going well, you raise the bar. And when things aren't on track, you're asking very clearly, what do I need to do to get things back on track? That's what it means to have a relationship with our goals.
You know, I've heard that over the years and got it. I told myself I got it intellectually. I didn't have a relationship with that idea, right? I didn't get that emotionally in my body like I do now. I see that more, and I'm 45, an 11-year-old, a 5-year-old, been married for 12 years, and I'm just getting that at a deep core level about having a relationship with your goals and coming back to it and revisiting it and having traditions, daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, and annually. Right. So I love this conversation. I love that we're coming back to it too, because we get to see the evolution of your event, the evolution of the attendees, and we get to see it year after year. And it's why somebody like Hal, or, you know, who's a front row dad and, you know, very accomplished, you'd go, well, what is that guy going to learn? Right? Isn't he like a international best-selling author? Isn't he teaching everybody else what to do? And you're like, no, dude, he, just like everybody else needs, I think we need, especially in a marriage, somebody else to do the talking. I think whoever you are, wherever you are, that's a powerful point.
We've all heard it's not always the message, it's the messenger.
Yeah.
I mean, I even deal this with my wife, Amy. I mean, heck, Jay and I facilitate this event. And if I say it to my wife, it is not received the same as if business owner speaker Geoff on stage poses a question to the group and she's in the group and she searches for the answer herself.
Yeah.
It just, when it's facilitated, it is a very, very different experience.
You mean Amy doesn't wake up every day and say, baby, run me through the program one more time. Tell me all that you know. Tell me all that you know about goal setting.
She looked at me. She goes, are we going to do this every year? I said, yes, we are.
Oh, man. You know, I think it's also one of those events where, you know, for me, it was like, I remember I kind of insisted that we want to do this. It was really important that we do this. And like many, I want to say people in my life, when I've strongly encouraged them to go do something, they oftentimes thank me at the end. Mm-hmm. Now, I can also tell you there's been the opposite that's been true, where the more I persist, there's more resistance, and, you know, it just needs to be the right time. But I do think this is one of those events that you could say to your partner, hey, this is really important to me. Like, not just, hey, would you like to go? But like, please do this for me. Even if it's not for you, can we do this together? Would you give me this gift? That
will win every time, because if you have a significant other and they are not a goal setter, saying, honey, let's do a couples goal setting retreat virtually this year, that's not a compelling value proposition. What does work is to say, I love you, and I want us to have the absolute best life together. And I'm realizing it would mean a lot to me if we could go through an experience where I can get really clear on what it is that you actually want out of life and how I can support you. I want to be able to get that clarity and to be able to share it with you so you can support me. And I haven't always done the best job of supporting you in your initiatives because I wasn't always clear. And I really want to change that, which is why it's really important to me that we do this experience together. Will you do this with me?
Yeah.
They're going to say yes. And if they happen to say no, what you said there is, this is really important to me. Will you do this for me?
Do you know stats behind who really is the driving force to go to your event? Is it mostly women or men, or is there something to learn from that?
It's split. It's split. What surprised us most was realizing how many people have a significant other that's not a goal setter. And it usually is a huge point of contention. I mean, it was for Amy's and my relationship because, you know, let's rewind 5-6 years when I was in medical device sales before I started this company behind the one thing. I heard you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And I got really intentional about surrounding myself with mentors, people who are where I wanted to be. And all of a sudden I was on this growth rocket ship. I am sucking in information while my wife is changing diapers with our first child. And so I'm growing and she wasn't. And it created a real divide in our relationship. And when I reflect back over the last few years, the moments when I personally feel closest to her, and I know when she often feels closest to me, is when we're growing together. And this is not something that happens by default. It only happens by design.
Yeah. And so much of it is having the right framework. You know, because the way I'll use myself as the example rather than saying people, right? But where I screwed up is I tried to do this with Tatiana in the past, and I'm not an expert in this. Even though I've read books on the subject and I might know a thing or two about it, or I might have thought I know more than the average Joe, I still sucked at being a facilitator of the process. And I think that what was great for us at your event was you've done this, you've done the work. In fact, I remember when I was sitting in the audience, it's like, damn, Jeff's getting really good at presenting. Like, I remember having that feeling like you've got this dialed in, you've done the reps, you've done the work, and we are benefiting from that polished process that for her, especially being what I considered, and I've called her many, many times, this floating free spirit that doesn't like to be chained down, right? But you moved so quickly. It was engaging. It was entertaining. It was at her pace that she wanted to move at. And that was really, really cool. So it kept her engaged. It kept me engaged. And we benefited from the process. When I've tried to do it in the past, I realized I bring a lot of, even though I think I don't, you know how you say something and it's like, that you could go, well, technically the words I used were okay, but the tone beneath it all was F you, or like, yeah, this is a pain point for me, or this is a problem for me, or I'm projecting anger onto you. That's a problem with goals.
Well, and I think we have to unpack things here. People mistakenly think that my goals have to be your goals in a relationship. And it's one of the biggest fears is, okay, my significant other's not a goal setter. How do I get them on board? We've touched that. But the next fear is, what do we do if our goals aren't the same? And the answer is they actually don't have to be. And a perfect example of this is my partner, Jay Papazian. So he and his wife, Wendy, they just did their 14th annual couples goal setting retreat.
I think I saw pictures from that. Yeah.
They were the inspiration for this event. This is their 14th year in a row of doing this. And a while back, part of the process is we don't just ask what are our goals for this year. We actually imagine what we want our lives to look like someday from now, which, by the way, that's not something most people know the answer to. You have to give yourself the space to really journal and think, what would an extraordinary life look like someday from now in various areas of our lives? And you get clarity on that as an individual. Then you turn to your partner and share your thoughts. And again, it's not about it being the same. It's about having clarity on what matters so you can support one another. And I remember Jay shared with Wendy, one day I would really love to own a ranch. Because in Texas, there's not a lot of public land that you can go hunting on. And Jay grew up hunting with his father. It was some of his most cherished memories of his childhood. And he really wanted to do that with his kids. And Wendy was like, okay. And the next year when they sat down and they revisited their goals, Jay said, I really want to own a ranch someday. And she goes, oh, interesting. It wasn't a set it and forget it thing. He's thinking about it again. The third year they sat down, I really want to own a ranch someday from now. And she's like, okay, this is the third year in a row this has shown up. This is clearly very important to him. During that third year, the opportunity came for them to buy a ranch with a partner. And because 3 years in a row, Jay had communicated the importance of this to Wendy, when the opportunity showed up, Wendy had zero interest in a ranch. She could give two shits about it. But because she knew it was that important to Jay, she instantly said yes.
Wow.
And now something that was a huge someday goal for Jay became part of their reality and part of their family rituals, versus what happens in most relationships. Somebody has a goal. Jay thinks, I want a ranch. And they keep it to themselves. Then the opportunity shows up and goes to the wife and says, hey, let's buy a ranch. And it looks like it's out of nowhere when in fact, it's actually been purposeful for a long time.
Yeah. Do you have a personal story of where the goal setting between you and Amy has made a difference? I'm almost like feeding what I think is going to be the answer to this.
Yeah, I think you know. Last year when Amy and I did our retreat, we asked the question, what matters to us someday from now? And the answer was, we want to be closer to mountains. Like Jay with his dad hunting, I grew up going skiing and snowboarding with my parents. It's my most prized memories of my childhood. My daughter's 7. My son is almost 5. I even get emotional just thinking about this. I'm really clear that I've got about 10 years left where the family is under the roof, where we can be intentional in our moments together. And 5 years into living in Austin, we have not made that a part of our lives, going on vacations to mountains. I know if I continue down this path, I will truly have regrets in my life with my children. That's very painful for me. So when we did our retreat last year, we said, we want to live by mountains someday. And we said, okay, well, based on that, what's one thing we can do this year? Let's not just cross our fingers. Let's put a plan. What are we going to do this year? And I remember thinking, well, as long as I run the company behind the one thing, I have to be in Austin because that's where Gary Keller and Jay Papazian are. Well, what's one thing we can do? And the answer was, we can take a vacation to a mountain location just to start scouting out locations. So when the day comes that we earn the right to move, we know where we want to go. Something interesting happened, John. After COVID hit, like, we locked all vacations down. We were doing nothing. And all of a sudden we were like, okay, we do need to take a trip. Let's go see family in California. And we booked flights. We lined the family up. We were going to wine country. All the wineries were booked. The family was excited to see the kids. And I remember looking at Amy, it hit me because I was reviewing my goals because I have a relationship with him. And it said, take one mountain vacation. I looked at her and I said, this is probably our last vacation this year. And it's not to the mountains. which matters more, California or mountains? And she said, mountains, but we've already committed to the family. And I said, I get that, but which matters more? If we could only say yes to one, which would it be? She said, mountains. I said, okay, I'll take care of the rest. I handled dealing with the family, backing out, because we were going to say yes to our priority. We booked Denver. A few weeks after we booked Denver, I had a realization during one of my thinking time blocks. I believe the future of work is virtually based, physically enhanced. And as a company that trains companies to be productive, we need to be that company so we can lead that transition. I made that pitch to Jay and Gary, and they said, we agree. And I went, oh, well, if that's the case and we're going to be virtual, do I need to be in Austin anymore? And they said, no. And we were leaving for Denver in like a week. Suddenly my Denver scouting trip became a house hunting trip, and we literally bought a house on that trip. So my someday vision, because we had set that someday vision, and because we had set a goal to take one trip, and because we had the relationship with the goals, we were able to say no to California. We were able to say yes to visiting Denver, so that when the clarity came up that we're going virtual, all of a sudden it became a house hunting trip, and we move in 2 weeks.
So I'm so excited for you, and I'm crushed
because
for Austin.
Because nobody brings that much energy to the volleyball game.
Nobody brings that much energy to the volleyball court. Yeah, I am very sad to see you go. And Rachel leaves also in February. She's moving to Washington. So I'm losing a couple of my favorite people. But I'm so happy for you, man. Like, that story really inspires me, Geoff. And I know that inspires a lot of people to get. And here's what I feel. I'm like, man, I feel him giving himself thinking time. I'm feeling the flow that you must have been in to know this about yourself and your childhood and what you want for your kids. And then all that clarity leading to your ability to make decisions, powerful decisions. And then through those decisions, I mean, if you would have gone to wine country, how different could your life have been right now?
We would not be moving.
I mean, that's remarkable. And then all the things that are going to happen, and arguably the things that will happen for the company and all the people that you'll impact as a result of being clear about being virtual with physical enhancements. Like, that's amazing, dude. And I'm so grateful that you shared that story. Really happy for you. And I'm excited to come see the place.
Yeah, well, we got lots of space. Here's what's important about this story. As high achieving dads, we all have big visions for our lives professionally. Otherwise, we wouldn't be in this community. We wouldn't be in this brotherhood. We all have big hopes for our relationships with our kids, the memories we want to share. The problem is, for many people, it's just that. It's hope. Hope is not a plan. And all we need to do is leverage the principles we already do in business that's made us successful into our personal lives. We don't just say, I'm going to grow the company X this year and cross our fingers and hope that it happens. No, we put a plan in place. We meet with our team and make sure they're clear on the piece of the plan they own. We have accountability. We check in. When things are off track, we ratchet up the heat and we get more laser focused on what matters most. It's the same thing here. Because the purpose of a goal is actually not to achieve the result. It's to be appropriate in the moment. It's to provide you with a compass as you make decisions to say, what do I need to do this week so I'm in alignment with that? Because the real problem, if we don't do this, is we fast forward, our kids leave our house, and we're left with great companies, possibly a distant relationship with our spouse, and a shaky foundation with our kids. Memories that could have been ours that will never be. And that's regret.
Yeah, man. I think back to the event that we attended last year, and I'm recalling some of our intentions, and it's fun to see them come to fruition. Like, wanting to be full-time front row dads was a goal. Wanting to hire an executive director for Front Row Foundation. Check. wanting to buy a new house for us as well. And we're like literally last night got the mortgage letter. The realtor's looking this week. So probably within the next 60 days, we're moving. Thinking about our family and school and changes that we wanted to make with that. It's fun to think now back to that moment and where we are right now and see the progress that the Romans have made as well. And so thank you for that, man. That was a big weekend for us.
My
It was
pleasure.
a big weekend for the Romans.
It's amazing what happens when you and a significant other, or if you don't have a significant other, you and a business partner, you and your team, you and your closest friend, do it with the people who have a vested interest in your success, who you want along with the journey along the way. When you really cast a vision for what you want out of life together, and then you're able to work it backwards to not here's everything we're doing this year. Here's the most important things. And if we just focused on these handful of things, maybe even just this one thing this year, we just were successful in that, it would make the whole year a win. Because like we said, John, what has surprised us and humbled us is the number of people that don't just go through this once. They make it part of their annual ritual. Because if all you did your first year is go through it to just establish a common language, that's a massive win. Because then the next year you come back, and if all you did is collectively agree on one goal that mattered for both of you, and you both had a relationship with it, and you got a huge win that year in that goal, it would change your relationship, and the whole year would be a win. And now you're starting to think bigger because you're going, okay, this is actually what it feels like to be on the same page. This is what's possible when 1 + 1 = more than 2. Then you start thinking bigger. Then you start really setting goals around multiple goals. You have your rhythm in place for sitting down on a weekly basis and dating your goals and dating them. So much becomes possible.
Tell us about the event. So if somebody's sitting there saying, all this sounds good, love the stories, love the transformation, understand that this is important. All right, now I'm interested. Give me the skinny. What do I got to do to get there? How do I join?
So for those of you who are high Ds and highly impatient, John created a URL that's a Front Row Dads URL so that it's easy for you. It's frontrowdads.com/goals. And that's goals with an S at the end. frontrowdads.com/goals. You can get all the information there. But here's the high level. No one succeeds alone. So don't try to. Do this with the people that you want to succeed with. When you do this, you sit down and we help you get really clear on what your top 3 core values are. The things that you hold most dear. Not what you want your values to be, but what they actually are. Oftentimes they're different. Once you have clarity on what your core values are, you now have anchored your actions with a sense of purpose. You understand the why behind it. Then you actually cast a vision for your life someday from now. I mean, literally, we will ask you big questions that will help you gain clarity and direction on a vision for like 20+ years out, which most people do not have because they don't know how to search that far. We help with that. Because once you understand that vision, things that might be attractive in the short run suddenly look for what they really are. Distractions. So you cast that someday vision, then we help you set 5-year goals and 1-year goals so you know exactly where you need to be. Once you have your 1-year goals, then this is where we help you have the relationship with them. What will your rhythm be to date your goals so that you develop the skill of checking in and asking, how are we doing? And based on that, using that as a compass to guide your behavior in the upcoming week. That's what we do in this. And you can learn more about it at frontrowdads.com/goals. And this year we're doing it 100% virtual. November 14th and 15th is a couples retreat. November 21st and 22nd is a retreat for individuals and teams. So it is specifically guided for the individual and the team setting.
So great. Just one last thought here about people that might be hesitating because they're wondering, and maybe I'm really off, maybe I'm projecting, but somebody who would not want to do it because they're worried that, like, what if our goals are so different that we break up?
It's a real fear. I haven't seen that happen yet, by the way, that I'm aware of. But I think I'd have to ask the question, if we really were not meant to be together, when would I like to figure that out?
Right.
And let's put it this way. If that's the path that you're on, you're going to get there eventually. What this could help with is helping you understand where you can make shifts so that is not the inevitable course. Because when we think about it, I mean, think about Conscious Loving, which I know you and I both have read. You're not having just the relationship with your significant other. You have a shadow. You have past traumas. They have past traumas. And until you are clear what your shadow is and they're clear about what their shadow is, you actually don't have a relationship with them. Your past traumas are having a relationship with their past traumas, and you never actually truly come together consciously. This is an opportunity for you to deeply understand them about why they work the way they work in terms of their values, for you to really understand what's important to them out of life. So you can ask the question, how might I be able to help them? How can I be wind in their sails and not stopping them?
Yeah, you're not in a relationship, you're in an entanglement. And that is such for me, as somebody who loves to be organized, is such a great way to look at the relationship, because this is a great way for me to go and get my relationship organized. And sometimes even when my home feels disorganized, I feel chaos in my body. I don't operate well. I'm kind of like jittery because it's just, I look around and it's just chaos everywhere. And that makes me feel off internally. This was a way to organize my relationship with the help of a professional organizer, and that just meant organizing our values, organizing our goals, organizing our thoughts, organizing our plan, but just being, I think about, who was it that wrote Getting Things Done? What's his name? David Allen. He says, if you feel stress about your to-do list and whatnot, that's just because you don't have a good system. If you have a really good system, you're not feeling a lot of stress because you're like, my system's got it. But if you're feeling like you got to juggle all that internally, so maybe my call to my brothers out there is, if you're feeling anxious, if you're feeling like, damn, 2020 threw us some serious curveballs, really knocked us off our game or gave us some new things to look at, like maybe there's never been a more important time to realign or to get aligned with your spouse than right now, with all the shifts and all the changes that the world is facing. And look, I've said this today 3 times already, but it's like picking between 2 candidates is not going to solve the problems of the world. They're not going to solve the problems in your life. Like no one's coming to your rescue right now. You need to participate in your own rescue. And that starts with getting your business in order at home. It starts with your spouse. It starts with your kids. And that's where it goes.
Here's the real problem people are facing right now. They are sacrificing their long-term vision based on short-term circumstances. And even with a lot of uncertainty around, it's real. We have the opportunity, when we don't know the obvious answer, to search for an answer we actually can focus on. Just like when Amy and I identified mountain location, I could not see a path to making that happen because frankly, I can't see past this organization. I love this thing. I want to make this my life. This is my life's calling based on all the information I have right now. And I'm going, well, that means we're always in Austin, and I am not a freaking Texan. Sorry. But I couldn't see past it. And my wife said, okay, I'm going to use your own question on you. What's one thing we can do this year to be closer to that? And immediately I thought, I don't know. And I took a dose of my own medicine and said, Geoff, search for the answer. What's one thing we can do this year? And the answer was, let's take a trip with the intention of scouting a location. Okay, we can do that. And because I searched past the wall of I don't know, didn't allow a lack of clarity to stop me, and came up with an answer, everything became possible. Do not sacrifice your vision for your life based on short-term circumstances.
You found the lead domino in that case, huh?
Damn straight.
Hip to one. Hey, man, this has been a great chat. I just love my time with you. And I'm grateful for knowing that even when you move, that this won't be the end of our friendship, that we're really just getting warmed up. You've made a huge impact in my life, in the brotherhood, and I know to many, many more. And for anybody who's listening on this show, please check out Geoff's work within the one thing. The podcast is incredible. I've listened to myself, gotten tremendous value. I remember when I was working on staffing and hiring, went to your podcast and I was listening, and there's so much value that you bring to the world with Jay and with Gary. Shout out to those two guys. I don't know Gary, but I do know Jay, and I love him very much. And what you are all up to collectively and your culture and your team, it's inspiring. So guys, read the book, listen to the podcast, get involved in the work that Geoff is doing. And by the way, can you give a little shout out too, since so many of the guys that listen are business owners and entrepreneurs, lead teams, you're doing work and your team is doing work to support people that way also, and not to muddy the waters, but can you just talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Well, it organically happened where we had companies reaching out saying, can you come speak at the event? And I got really frustrated that we could come in, we could deliver a message and people would say it was the best thing they've ever heard, and they did jack squat about it. It really drove me mad because everything that we're doing is about helping people better invest their time so they can achieve extraordinary results. I want to see behavior change. And so being accountable, I asked, well, what's one thing I can do differently? And as a result, it has turned into a pretty big corporate training organization where we help companies. I don't care if you got 5 people or literally 500,000. I work directly with C-level executives inside of many of the Fortune 500 now, helping them create a truly productive culture. Not one where people show up and check email and go from meeting to meeting and say yes if somebody asks if you got a minute, but one where it is an expectation that you invest your time and you hold it accountable to creating a return for you personally and professionally in that order. And it has been one of the most meaningful things that I've done. I've absolutely loved what we do in the corporate setting.
And what's the one place they can go to learn about all that work?
It's you being on brand. It's theonething.com/training. And that's with the number 1 in the URL. So the book and the podcast are all spelled out, the ONETHING, but the website's with the number 1. So the number 1 thing.com/training.
Well, guys, that's a lot of resources for you that you can take action on. And the one that I would suggest you start with, if you want a starting place, if you want the lead domino, is go to frontrowdads.com/goals. Get set up for this event. Hal will be there. I will be there. It's going to be awesome. I'm imagining
virtually. And Hal said he's not going to wear any pants. So there's
many of our other front row dads, I'm sure, are going to be there that I don't know about, but please join us. I would love to. Maybe we'll end up in a breakout room together or something. But frontrowdads.com/goals. Do it for yourself. Do it for your marriage. Do it for your kids. And like Geoff said, allow yourself that time to gain clarity so that you can find your version of the mountain home and get your kids on the slopes and recreate the memories you experienced as a child, or design the experiences you wish you had as a child, and do that today before you run out of time. Geoff, thanks for being here, man. This has been awesome. Love you, brother.
My pleasure, John. Thanks.